His fingers were trembling against her jaw, and for the first time in 2 years of marriage, Aoife saw fear in Kang Minho's eyes. Not the cold calculation she'd grown used to. Not the distant indifference that had defined every moment of their arrangement. But raw, desperate fear, like a man watching his control shatter into 1,000 pieces he couldn't put back together. 2 years I've kept my distance, he whispered in Korean, his breath hot against her skin in the darkened hallway of Club Azure. I can't anymore. The bass from the club vibrated through the walls, but all Aoife could hear was her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. This was the man who'd bought her with threats. The man who'd saved her father's life in exchange for hers. The man who'd never once looked at her like she was anything more than a business transaction. Until tonight. His other hand pressed against the wall beside her head, caging her in, and she realized with startling clarity that she wasn't afraid. She should be. This was Seoul's most dangerous underworld prince, a man whose name made criminals and politicians alike break into cold sweats. But right now, watching his carefully constructed walls crumble, she felt something else entirely. Power. For the first time since she'd said, I do, with her mother's tears still wet on her cheeks, Aoife felt like she had a choice. And God help her, she wanted to make the wrong one. Welcome to Afro-Korean Love Stories. If you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to watch would leave you speechless. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I'd really love to know. Now, let's dive into it. 24 months earlier, Aoife's world had been completely different. She was the daughter of Deo Thompson, a rising Black American diplomat stationed in Seoul, living a life of embassy parties and international relations. Her father was brilliant, principled, and dangerously naive about the corruption woven into the fabric of Seoul's elite. When he stumbled upon evidence linking some of Korea's most powerful families to an international smuggling ring, he thought he was doing the right thing. He thought justice mattered more than politics. He was wrong. Deo Thompson vanished on a Tuesday. No witnesses. No leads. Just gone, like he'd never existed at all. Aoife's mother fell apart. 3 days of police visits and dead ends and diplomatic channels that led nowhere. 3 days of Aoife holding her mother while she sobbed, wondering if they'd ever see him again. On the 4th day, Kang Minho walked through their door. Aoife had seen him before, at a distance. Everyone in Seoul's upper circles knew who he was. The youngest son of the Kang family, the one who'd taken their legitimate business empire and built something far more profitable in the shadows. He was beautiful in that dangerous way that made smart women cross the street. Sharp jawline, eyes like black ice, presence that commanded entire rooms without effort. He sat in their living room like he owned it. Maybe he did. Aoife was learning that the Kang family owned more of Seoul than anyone wanted to admit. Your father is alive, he said in perfect English, his voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. For now. Aoife's mother had grabbed her hand, so tight it hurt. What do you want? Aoife heard herself ask. Minho's eyes fixed on her then, really seeing her for the first time. She watched something flicker across his face. Surprise, maybe, or assessment. She was used to that look. Being a beautiful Black woman in Seoul meant existing as both invisible and spectacular, depending on the context. Marriage, he said simply. You become my wife. You appear at my side when required. You maintain the perfect image. In exchange, your father lives. He returns home safely, and your family remains intact. And if I refuse? His smile didn't reach his eyes. Then you'll never find his body. Aoife had looked at her mother's tear-stained face. At the photo of her father on the mantel, his arm around her shoulders at her college graduation. At the life she'd planned, disappearing like smoke. How long, she whispered. 2 years. Then we reassess. She said yes. What choice did she have? The wedding was small, clinical. A transaction dressed up in silk and flowers. Minho slid a diamond ring onto her finger that probably cost more than her father's annual salary, and she became Mrs. Kang before she'd fully processed what was happening. Her father came home 3 days later, shaken but alive. He never spoke about what happened. The smuggling investigation quietly disappeared. And Aoife moved into Minho's penthouse in Gangnam, into a life that looked like a fairy tale from the outside and felt like a prison from within. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline, designer everything, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. But it was cold, sterile. A museum where Aoife was just another curated piece. Minho gave her her own wing, her own bedroom, bathroom, closet full of designer clothes she never asked for. They had separate lives under the same roof. He'd come home at dawn smelling of whiskey and danger, and he'd pass her bedroom without a glance. The first few months were the hardest. Aoife learned the rules of her new life through silence and observation. She was to attend certain events on Minho's arm, always perfectly dressed, always smiling that diplomatic daughter smile she'd perfected years ago. She was to never ask questions about his business, never interfere, never expect anything beyond the cold formality he offered. At galas and charity functions, she played her role flawlessly, the exotic wife, the conversation piece. Minho's associates would stare, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed disdain. His family was worse. His mother refused to acknowledge her existence. His older brother treated her like furniture. But Minho? He was a glacier. Polite when necessary, distant always. He'd place his hand on the small of her back for photos and remove it the second the camera clicked. He'd introduce her as my wife, in that flat tone that made it sound like a business title. And then he'd disappear into his world of shadows and secrets, leaving her alone in their golden cage. Aoife tried to build a life anyway. She took Korean language classes, though her tutors seemed surprised that Mrs. Kong would bother. She volunteered at international community centers. She video called her parents weekly, lying through her teeth about how happy she was. Her father never asked if she was okay. Maybe he couldn't bear to know the answer. Maybe he'd guessed the price of his freedom the moment he saw the ring on her finger. The loneliness was crushing. Seoul was a city of 10 million people, and Aoife had never felt more isolated. She'd made a few friends among other expats, but how could she explain her situation? Yes, I'm married to a gorgeous Korean man who owns half the city's underground. No, he's never touched me. No, I can't leave. By month 6, she'd stopped trying to understand Minho. He was a locked room she'd never get the key to. By month 12, she'd stopped hoping things would change. By month 18, she'd almost convinced herself she preferred it this way. Distance meant safety. If he never touched her, he could never hurt her. If they never connected, she could survive the remaining time with her heart intact. But something shifted as they approached their 2-year mark. Minho started coming home earlier. Not much, midnight instead of dawn, but enough that Aoife noticed. She'd hear him moving through the apartment, pausing outside her bedroom door before continuing to his own wing. Once, she'd woken at 2 a.m. to find him standing in the kitchen, tie loosened, staring at nothing. She'd frozen in the doorway of her room, watching him in the dim light. He looked exhausted, human. For just a moment, the ice had melted enough for her to see the man underneath. Then he'd sensed her presence, and the walls had slammed back up. "Go to bed, Aoife," he'd said quietly. It was one of the few times he'd used her name. She'd obeyed. But she'd lain awake for hours, wondering what he'd been thinking about in that unguarded moment. The tension in the apartment grew thicker. Sometimes she'd catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't read. Sometimes she'd find herself watching him back, studying the line of his jaw, the way his shoulders carried the weight of his empire. It was dangerous, this new awareness. She couldn't afford to see him as anything but her captor. Couldn't afford to wonder what his hands would feel like if they touched her with something other than cold formality. But late at night, alone in her too-big bed, she wondered anyway. The Friday everything changed started like any other. Minho had left before dawn for business. Aoife had gone through her morning routine, coffee on the balcony, Korean lessons, answering emails from her mother about family gossip that felt like it belonged to someone else's life. By evening, the apartment walls were closing in. She needed air, space, to remember what it felt like to exist outside the suffocating perfection of Mrs. Kang's life. She texted her friend Maya, "Going out tonight. Join me?" Maya's response was immediate. Finally. Club Azure at 10. Where's something that'll make Korean boys cry? Aoife smiled for the first time in days. She didn't know Club Azure. Didn't know it was one of Minho's properties, one of the crown jewels in his empire of profitable shadows. She just knew she needed to dance. To feel her body move freely, without the weight of eyes judging whether she was worthy of the Kong name. To be Aoife Thompson again, even if just for a few hours. She chose a dress that hugged every curve, deep emerald green that made her dark skin glow. Gold heels. Hair falling in natural curls around her shoulders instead of the sleek styles Minho's world preferred. Minimal jewelry except for the wedding ring she couldn't bring herself to remove. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. This woman looked powerful, dangerous, free. The club was packed, all pulsing lights and bodies moving to Afrobeats, mixed with K-pop. Maya found her at the bar, squealing about how stunning she looked, shoving a drink into her hand. To freedom. Maya shouted over the music. Aoife clinked glasses with her. To freedom. The alcohol burned pleasantly down her throat. The music vibrated through her bones. And when Maya pulled her onto the dance floor, Aoife let go of everything. The perfect wife persona, the loneliness, the careful control she maintained every second of every day. She just moved. Her hips rolled to the rhythm. Her arms lifted above her head. She felt the bass in her chest, felt her body remember what joy was. Around her, people stared. She was used to that, but tonight she didn't care. Let them look. Let them see a woman who refused to be invisible. She didn't notice the VIP section above the main floor. Didn't see the man who'd gone completely still, his glass of whiskey forgotten, his entire attention fixed on the woman dancing below like she'd forgotten the world existed. Minho had owned Club Azure for 3 years. He came here sometimes when he needed to think, to watch the chaos of normal people living normal lives. It reminded him what he was protecting, what he'd sacrificed everything to build. Tonight, he'd been meeting with associates about a shipment issue. Boring logistics that required his presence, but not his full attention. He'd been about to leave when movement on the dance floor caught his eye. Are you feeling the tension? Because it's about to get even more intense, bestie. If you're loving this forbidden love story, smash that like button right now and drop a comment telling me, team distance or team take the risk. And here's the real question. Do you think Minho can keep his control, or is he about to lose it completely? Tell me your predictions in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell because you do not want to miss what happens when these two finally collide. Trust me, it's going to be explosive. Now, let's continue. And then his world had stopped. Aoife, his wife, his untouchable, off-limits, business arrangement wife, was dancing like every movement was an act of rebellion. The emerald dress moved with her body like water, and Minho forgot how to breathe. For 2 years, he'd kept his distance. For 2 years, he'd pretended she was just another obligation, another piece on his chessboard. He'd told himself the marriage was strategy. Her father's investigation had threatened too many powerful people, and Minho had needed the leverage. Taking Deo Thompson's daughter as his wife had been the perfect move. It showed his allies he could handle problems. It gave him an asset he could use. That's what he'd told himself. But watching Aoife now, watching her move with complete abandon, her natural hair wild around her shoulders, her body fluid and free, Minho felt the lie he'd been living shatter like glass. He'd wanted her from the moment she'd looked him in the eye and asked what he wanted. Most people couldn't hold his gaze for more than a few seconds. Aoife had stared him down with fire in her eyes, even as she'd agreed to marry him to save her father. She was terrifying, beautiful and fierce, and everything Minho had trained himself not to want. So he'd built walls. He'd treated her like a stranger. He'd passed her bedroom door every night and kept walking, even though every instinct screamed at him to stop, to knock, to see if she'd let him in. He'd convinced himself the distance was kindness, that she deserved better than a man whose hands were stained with blood and secrets, that when the 2 years ended, he'd let her go, and she'd never have to know what she did to him. But tonight, watching her dance, Minho realized he'd been lying to himself all along. Boss. His second-in-command, Taeyong, was staring at him with concern. You okay? Minho wasn't okay. He was the opposite of okay. Every carefully constructed wall he'd built was crumbling, and he couldn't stop it. That woman. Taeyong followed his gaze. Holy, is that Mrs. Kong? Minho's hand tightened on his glass. Don't call her that. But she's your... I know what she is. His voice came out rougher than intended. On the dance floor, some guy was moving closer to Aoife. Too close. His hands reached for her waist, and white-hot rage flooded Minho's veins. He was moving before he could think. Down the VIP stairs, through the crowd, his security team scrambling to keep up. People parted for him instinctively, they always did, but Minho only had eyes for one person. Aoife was laughing at something Maya said, completely unaware of the man behind her or the storm headed her way. Then her friend's eyes went wide, looking past Aoife's shoulder, and Aoife turned. Their eyes met across the dance floor. Minho watched recognition flash across her face, then something else. Not fear, not even surprise. Something that looked almost like relief?
No.
He was imagining it. Had to be. The guy who'd been about to touch her took one look at Minho's expression and disappeared into the crowd. Smart man. Minho reached Aoife in 3 strides. Up close, she was even more devastating. Her skin glowed with a light sheen of sweat. Her chest rose and fell with exertion. She smelled like coconut and something sweet he couldn't name. What are you doing here? She had to shout over the music. I own this club. He watched her process that information. What are you doing here?
Dancing.
Is that against the rules? There was challenge in her voice. 2 years of cold formality had made him forget how much fire she had. How much strength it took to look at him, without flinching. We need to talk. He took her elbow, gentle but firm. I'm with my friend. She'll understand. Maya was already waving them off, mouthing something that looked like go, with excessive enthusiasm. Traitor. Minho guided Aoife through the crowd, his hand on the small of her back. But this time it felt different. This time, he could feel the heat of her skin through the thin fabric. This time, he didn't want to let go. He led her down a hallway marked private, past security who nodded and looked away. The bass from the club faded as they moved deeper into the building, until they were alone in a corridor lined with doors to private rooms. Minho stopped, turned to face her. In her heels, she almost matched his height. They were so close he could count her eyelashes. You can't be here, he said. Why not? It's a public club. Because he stopped.
Because why?
Because watching other men look at her made him want to burn the building down? Because seeing her happy and free reminded him of everything he denied himself? Because what, Minho? She stepped closer, and he smelled whiskey on her breath. She'd been drinking. Not drunk, but loose enough to be brave. For 2 years, you've barely spoken to me. You don't get to tell me where I can go. Aoife. Don't Aoife me. You don't even use my name most of the time. I'm just my wife, when you need me for photos. The rest of the time, I don't exist to you. Her words hit like physical blows. That's not. Not what? Not true. She laughed, but there was pain underneath it. I live in your house. I wear your ring. I smile for your associates. But I'm so lonely I could scream, Minho. So yes, I came to a club. I danced. I remembered what it felt like to be human instead of a pretty doll you keep in a cage. Every word was true. Every word was an indictment. And Minho had no defense because she was right. I was trying to protect you, he said quietly. From what? From me. The confession ripped out of him. From this life. From... He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. You were never supposed to be permanent, Aoife. 2 years, and then you'd be free. But if we... Understanding dawned in her eyes. You stayed away because you thought it would be easier. Yes. For who? For you. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shattered him completely. She reached up and touched his face. Her palm was warm against his cheek. Minho's breath caught. In 2 years of marriage, this was the first time she'd touched him voluntarily. The first time she'd reached for him instead of pulling away. You're an idiot, she whispered. Then she kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, like she was testing whether he'd pull away. But Minho was done with distance. Done with walls. Done with pretending. He pulled her against him and kissed her back like a drowning man finding air. She tasted like whiskey and something sweet. Her body fit against his perfectly, curves pressing into hard lines. Minho's hand slid into her hair, careful not to pull, and she made a small sound that destroyed what was left of his control. 2 years. 2 years of living in the same space, breathing the same air, wanting and denying and pretending. It all came pouring out in that kiss. Aoife's arms wrapped around his neck. Her nails scraped against his scalp and Minho groaned, backing her against the wall. She gasped against his mouth and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until there was no space left between them. Minho, his name on her lips was a prayer and a curse. Tell me to stop. His forehead pressed against hers, both of them breathing hard. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll walk away. I'll go back to how things were. And if I don't want to go back? His heart was hammering so hard, he was sure she could feel it. Then everything changes. She looked at him with those eyes that had haunted his dreams for 2 years.
Good.
I'm tired of pretending. Aoife, you need to understand, if we do this, if we cross this line, he struggled to find words through the haze of wanting her. I won't be able to let you go when the 2 years are up. I won't be able to stay away anymore. This, us, it becomes real. Maybe it was always real, she said softly. Maybe we were just too scared to admit it. She was right. God help him. She was right. From the moment he'd walked into her mother's living room and seen her standing there, fierce and terrified and beautiful, some part of him had known. This woman would either save him or destroy him. Maybe both. I'm not a good man, Aoife. He needed her to know. Needed her to understand what she'd be choosing. The things I do, the world I live in, it's dark. Dangerous. I've hurt people. I'll hurt more people. And if anyone ever tried to use you against me, I know who you are. Her fingers traced his jaw, gentle despite everything. I've known from the beginning. You think I didn't research you? Didn't ask questions? I know exactly what kind of man I married. And you're still here. I'm still here. She smiled, sad and sweet. For 2 years, I've watched you carry the weight of an empire alone. I've seen you at 3 a.m. looking exhausted. I've heard you on phone calls speaking in codes I don't understand. And I've never seen you be cruel.
Dangerous, yes.
Ruthless, absolutely. But not cruel. You don't know everything. I know enough. She pulled him closer. I know you saved my father when you could have just killed him. I know you gave me freedom in a cage, my own space, my own life. I know you've never forced me, never demanded anything beyond what our agreement required. And I know, her voice dropped to a whisper, I know you walk past my bedroom every night and I hear you pause. I know because I'm always awake listening. Minho's eyes closed.
She'd known.
All this time she'd known. I thought I was protecting you from myself, he said. Turns out I was just protecting myself from this. From what? From falling in love with my own wife. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. Aoife's breath hitched. Minho, I love you. Now that he'd started, he couldn't stop. I've loved you since you looked me in the eye and agreed to marry a monster to save your father. I've loved you through every dinner where you smiled for my associates, and every morning I've found you drinking coffee on the balcony like you're searching for freedom in the skyline. I've loved you, and it's terrified me because love makes you weak in my world. Love gets people killed. Tears were sliding down her cheeks. You're really bad at this distance thing, you know that? He laughed, rough and broken. Apparently. For the record, she whispered, I think I've been falling for you too. I tried not to. God, I tried so hard. You were supposed to be my captor, not this. Not what? Not someone I dream about. Not someone I miss when you're gone. Not someone whose smile I've only seen twice in 2 years and I'd give anything to see again. Minho's thumb wiped away her tears. I smile more than twice. Not for me. Not real smiles. Just that polite thing you do for photos. She looked up at him. I want real, Minho. If we're doing this, if we're making this real, I want all of you. Not the perfect husband act. The real you. The real me is complicated. I can handle complicated. The real me has enemies who would love to hurt you to get to me. Then we'll be careful. The real me might not be what you expect. She kissed him again, soft and sweet. The real you has been showing up in small moments for 2 years. I've been paying attention. I know you take your coffee black and you speak 4 languages and you have nightmares that wake you at 4 a.m. I know you're left-handed and you hate wearing ties and there's a scar on your shoulder you think I haven't noticed. Minho stared at her. How? I told you. I've been paying attention. Her smile was almost shy. Even when I shouldn't have been. Even when I was trying to keep my distance, I couldn't help watching you. We're both idiots, he said. Agreed. He kissed her again, slower this time, savoring, learning the taste of her, the feel of her against him. This was his wife,
His Aoife.
and he was never letting her go. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Aoife's lips were swollen and her eyes were bright.
Take me home, she said.
We are home. No, I mean, she blushed, and Minho found it adorable. Take me home and don't go to your wing. Stay with me, please. His heart nearly stopped. Aoife. 2 years, Minho. I've waited 2 years. I don't want to wait anymore.
He wanted to.
God, he wanted to so badly it hurt. But not like this. He forced the words out. Not when you've been drinking. Not in a club hallway. When we do this, when I touch you the way I've been dreaming about, I want you completely sober, completely sure. Can we just take a moment? The man finally confessed. After 2 years of holding back, Minho just laid his heart bare. Do you think Aoife should trust him? Is this real love, or is she making a mistake? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments, because I'm dying to know what you think. And if this story is giving you all the feels, bestie, show some love with that like button and subscribe to Afro-Korean love stories for more passionate, forbidden romance that'll have your heart racing. We're almost at the ending. Let's see how this turns out. Keep watching. Disappointment flashed across her face, but then she nodded.
Okay.
You're right. But Minho? Yes. Tomorrow. Don't make me wait longer than tomorrow. The promise in her eyes nearly undid him. Tomorrow, he agreed. I'll come home early. We'll have dinner. We'll talk. And then we stop pretending. She finished. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Let me take you home now.
Properly.
They walked through the club together, and this time Minho didn't hide. His hand stayed on her waist, possessive and proud. Let everyone see. Let them know that Mrs. Kong was more than just a trophy wife. She was his, and he was hers, and anyone who had a problem with that could take it up with him directly. Maya caught Aoife's eye as they passed and gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up. Aoife laughed, the sound like music cutting through the bass. In the car ride home, they sat close. Not touching, but aware of every breath, every movement. The tension had shifted from cold distance to heated anticipation. Minho's driver kept his eyes carefully on the road, but there was a small smile on his face. Back at the penthouse, they stood in the entryway like awkward teenagers.
So, Aoife said.
So, Minho echoed. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. He wanted to kiss her again, but didn't trust himself to stop. Get some sleep, Aoife. You too. She started toward her wing, then paused. Turned back, walked to him, and kissed him one more time, quick and sweet. Thank you. For what? For finally breaking. She smiled. Good night, Minho. Good night. He watched her disappear into her room, then stood there for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. 2 years of careful control, shattered in one night. And he didn't regret a single second. In his own room, Minho couldn't sleep. He lay awake replaying every moment, her body moving on the dance floor, her hand on his face, the way she'd said his name like it meant something. Tomorrow felt impossibly far away. Down the hall, Aoife was having the same problem. She touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. For 2 years, she'd convinced herself she could survive this marriage without feeling anything. But tonight had proven what she'd been denying. She didn't want to just survive. She wanted to live. And she wanted to live with him. Morning came slowly. Minho canceled his meetings, something he never did. He went to the penthouse kitchen and attempted to cook, which his chef found both amusing and concerning. By noon, he'd gone through 3 different outfits. By 2 p.m., he'd given up and just paced. Aoife spent the day equally nervous. She changed her dress 4 times. Did her makeup, wiped it off, did it again. Maya called to demand details, and Aoife told her everything, feeling like a teenager confessing her first crush. Girl, you're married to him, Maya laughed. Why are you so nervous? Because it's different now, Aoife said. Before, it was just existing together. Now it's real. What if we don't know how to be real with each other? Then you figure it out together. That's what couples do. By 6 p.m., Aoife was ready. Simple black dress, hair natural, minimal jewelry. She looked at herself in the mirror and took a deep breath. This was it. No more pretending. No more distance. She walked to the dining room and found Minho already there. He'd set the table himself. Candles, flowers, the works. He looked devastating in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, showing those forearms that she'd secretly admired for months. When he saw her, his entire face transformed. There was that real smile she'd been craving. "Hi," she said. "Hi." He pulled out her chair. "You look beautiful. You clean up okay yourself." She sat, trying to calm her racing heart. Dinner was surprisingly easy. They talked, really talked, for the first time. About everything and nothing. Minho told her about growing up in the Kong family, the pressure to succeed, the moment he decided to build his own empire. Aoife talked about her childhood, moving between diplomatic posts, feeling like she never quite belonged anywhere. "Is that why you studied international relations?" he asked.
Partially.
"I thought if I understood the systems, I'd understand where I fit." She smiled. "Didn't quite work out that way." "Where do you think you fit now?" She looked at him across the candlelight. "I'm still figuring that out. But maybe here. With you. If you'll have me." Minho reached across the table and took her hand. "Aoife, I've wanted you from the beginning. I just didn't know if I was allowed to keep you." "You're allowed." She squeezed his fingers. "I choose this. I choose you." After dinner, they moved to the balcony with wine. Seoul glittered below them. Millions of lights in the darkness. Minho stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, and Aoife leaned back against his chest. "Tell me about the scar," she said softly. "The one on your shoulder." He was quiet for a moment. "Knife fight. 4 years ago. Someone thought they could take territory that wasn't theirs. What happened to them? They learned better." His voice was dark, and Aoife was reminded of exactly who she'd married. But she wasn't afraid. "Does it bother you? Knowing what I do?" "Yes," she said honestly. "But not in the way you think. It bothers me that you carry all of it alone. That you don't let anyone help. I have people. People who work for you, not people who see you." She turned in his arms to face him. "I want to see you, Minho. All of you. Even the dark parts." He studied her face like he was memorizing it. "You might not like what you find. Try me." So he told her about the empire he'd built, the deals he'd made, the lines he'd crossed. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make himself sound better than he was. He gave her the truth, raw and ugly. And Aoife listened. She didn't judge, didn't run, just listened and understood that this man, dangerous as he was trying to build something that mattered, trying to protect what was his. "Your father's investigation," Minho said quietly. "He wasn't wrong. The people he was looking into, they're corrupt, dangerous. But some of them are also the only thing standing between Seoul and complete chaos. It's complicated, and you're part of that balance. I'm part of keeping order, even if my methods aren't clean." "Nothing about power is ever clean," Aoife said. "My father taught me that, even if he didn't mean to." They stood there as the city pulsed below them, two people finally being honest after 2 years of lies. "I love you," Minho said again, like he needed to make sure she knew. "I know I said it last night, but I need you to really hear it. I love you, Aoife Thompson. I love your strength and your fire, and the way you've survived everything I put you through. I love that you see me and aren't afraid." "I love you too," she whispered. "I don't know when it happened. Maybe that first day when you walked into my mother's living room and I saw something human underneath all that ice. Maybe later, during all those nights, I listened to you pause outside my door. But it happened, and I'm done fighting it." He kissed her then, under the Seoul stars, and this time there was no hesitation. No holding back. Just them, finally together, finally real. When they pulled apart, Minho's voice was rough. "Come to bed with me. My bed. Not separate wings anymore. Not separate lives." "Yes," Aoife said simply. He took her hand and led her through the penthouse to his room. She'd never been inside before. It was surprisingly simple. Dark wood, clean lines, a massive bed that dominated the space. Personal in a way the rest of the apartment wasn't. I'm nervous, she admitted. So am I. You're nervous? He smiled, terrified. I've wanted this for so long. I'm afraid I'll mess it up. She reached up and cupped his face. We'll figure it out together. And they did. Slowly, carefully, learning each other in the darkness. Minho was gentle despite the hunger in his eyes, and Aoife was brave despite her trembling hands. They took their time, discovering what made each other gasp, what made them sigh. When it was over, they lay tangled together, Aoife's head on Minho's chest, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. No more separate wings, he murmured. No more pretending, she agreed. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Together. Together, he promised. Outside, Sol never slept. But inside their room, finally, they both rested. 2 years of distance erased in one night. 2 broken people finding wholeness in each other. The next morning, Aoife woke to find Minho already awake, watching her with soft eyes. Hi, she said sleepily. Hi. He kissed her forehead. I have a meeting at 10, but I'll cancel if. Don't cancel. I'll be here when you get back. Promise. She smiled.
Promise.
I'm not going anywhere. Over the following weeks, their life transformed. Minho came home earlier. They had dinner together every night. They talked and laughed and slowly built something real out of the fragments of their arrangement. The outside world noticed. Minho's associates saw how he looked at his wife now, the possessive way he touched her. His family's disapproval meant nothing. Aoife was his choice, his love, and he didn't hide it anymore. Aoife bloomed under his attention. She smiled more, laughed freely, started getting involved in Minho's legitimate business ventures, her diplomatic training proving invaluable. They weren't perfect. They fought sometimes, about his dangerous work, about her safety, about the future. But they fought as partners, working through problems instead of avoiding them. 3 months after that night at Club Azure, Minho came home with papers. What are these? Aoife asked. Our original agreement, the contract that brought us together. He handed her a lighter. Burn it. She stared at him. But 2 years are almost up. And I don't want you here because of a contract, Aoife. I want you here because you choose to be. So burn it. Choose me freely or walk away. Either way, you're free. Her hands shook as she held the papers. Her freedom, right there. She could leave. Go back to her old life. Be Aoife Thompson again instead of Mrs. Kong. She flicked the lighter and watched the contract burn. I choose you, she said as the flames consumed their past. I choose this life. I choose us. Minho pulled her into his arms and kissed her like she was the air he breathed. Forever, he asked. Forever, she promised. And in that moment, with their past turning to ash and their future stretching bright before them, they both knew they'd found something neither had expected, real love, born from impossible circumstances, stronger for having survived the distance. 2 years married, and they were finally beginning.
Wow.
From a cold, loveless arrangement to burning, undeniable love, Aoife and Minho's journey proves that sometimes the most unexpected circumstances lead to the most powerful connections. If this story touched your heart, grabbed your attention, or had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It helps more people discover these incredible love stories. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe to Afro-Korean Love Stories and turn on notifications because we have more passionate, intense, forbidden romance coming your way that you absolutely cannot miss. Share this video with someone who loves a good love story with power, passion, and emotional depth. And remember, sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that begin in the most impossible circumstances. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep believing in love that defies all odds.